Hello, and welcome to Be the CEO of Your Life, the go-to space for executive women who excel in the boardroom but are seeking that elusive balance in the living room. You don't have to choose between a fulfilling career and a thriving personal life. Here, we show you how you can have both. I am Olga Lacroix, your host. As an executive, leadership, and life coach, also as a mindfulness teacher, I specialize in helping powerhouse women like you navigate the complexities of work and life. While my therapist days are behind me, the insights gained enrich every coaching session. If you're an overachiever wrestling with the tightrope of professional brilliance, personal well-being, you're in the right place. Expect deep dive into topics like effective communication, setting healthy boundaries, and recalibrating your mindset for integrated success. So let's get started and make you excel holistically. Happy Monday, everybody. I am here with Kirsty Knight, and we're about to tell you, well, I'm about to tell you who she is, but I'm very excited to have her here all the way from Wales, you guys. I have no idea where in the world you're listening from, but to me, this is a big deal because we're like 9 hours apart, and we still made it work for you guys. So, Kirsty, welcome to the Be the CEO of Your Own Life episode. Or I should say podcast. And I don't know what we're going to call this episode, but maybe something about taking bold action. That's like the name of your podcast, right? That's what I've written, right? But also like life-work balance, something along that line, because I just think that that's what our conversation is going to lead us. For everybody, Kirsty is a Master Certified Business and Time coach. Like, we definitely need to talk about that, Kirsty. Time coach. She's also a serial small business owner, self-published author, and she's the host of the podcast, the Bold Action Taker podcast. Her specialty is helping ambitious, hardworking women become more strategic, organized, and productive with their time, their business, so that they can ultimately make more money in their business working fewer hours. So the dream for most people who own so I want to welcome you, Kirsty, into the show. Once again, I'm so appreciative of your time, and I can't wait for everybody to hear what we are going to share. What didn't I tell them about you? Tell us a little bit, something that I didn't share just now with that bio.
Oh, well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. Something about me. Okay, so I've had a little bit of a weird hodgepodge of jobs and careers to get here. I grew up on a farm. And I went to university to study ecology. I decided I wanted to be a marine biologist. So I went to Florida for a year to be like a marine biologist for a year. Then I decided I wanted to be a vet, but then I found out that the fees were too high. And because I knew myself, I knew I quite liked changing my mind. I was like, do I want to commit to 5 years of veterinary school and all of this debt and then change my mind? So then I ended up becoming a project manager basically I moved back to my home farm and I project managed a huge barn conversion. So it was just this big old stone outbuilding, and I basically managed the builders and renovated it and converted it into like 6 properties. I then set up a camping and glamping business. So we had like the bell tents in the field. That was my first proper business. So I was self-employed the whole time, but that was my first proper business. And I started running that. And then a couple of years later, I decided to set up a partnership with my sister to be sort of like a holiday letting agency. So the cottages that I had then developed, we furnished and let out and managed that as I was still working on the campsite and as I was still renovating buildings and all the rest of it. And then I found personal development because I was struggling in basically with those 3 different careers at the same time, struggling to find my work-life balance.
Yeah.
Massively so, understandably so. And that's how I started looking for coaching. And I really entered coaching to help me. And then realized as I was coaching that actually I really love helping other women with business. And I kind of became obsessed with time and obsessed with productivity and obsessed with basically building a business that you could still have a life with because of my own struggles. And so there's been this sort of, coming together of all of those parts into what I now use to help my clients with. And that's what I do now. And I still have the campsite business. I stepped away from the holiday letting business, and I haven't done any renovations for a while, but I'm definitely feeling the itch to. I'm like, wait, I've been doing this long enough. What else can I add in here?
So you are who I call a multi-passion human.
Right.
You just got a lot of energy and you have a lot of passions, and it is totally unfair to just settle on one thing. You're like, why? When I just have all these passions. Love it. I think I identify. And actually, funny enough, Kirsty, this is what my husband and I do for a living. We renovate, we develop land, and we one piece of land we can build easily 6 homes or duplex, so like 12 homes, 12 apartments in 6, and that's our passion. We just like love it. Of ideas to like make out of nothing somewhere something, and that is all my husband. I don't have the vision that he does, like I'm sure you do as well. You're like, oh, this little home can be
my other half is an architect, so that helps.
Oh yeah, that definitely helps. We have to pay those. We have to pay for those. But I totally understand, because we are a family of multi-passion humans. If you were talking to us, you would hear us say, oh, I love that so many times, where you'd be like, so which one is it? Tennis or golf? I were like, both. We just love both. Construction or traveling? Both. We love both. So I'm so happy you're coaching in business. I think that you have probably a lot to offer from a personal and also a professional perspective. So you guys, you're getting a treat here in this conversation with Kirsty that I'll be hosting. So Kirsty, I'm just curious, that part of your brain that knows that it changes its mind often, right? And you're like, you make decisions based on like, okay, I know. I also was accepted into NYU to do my master's. When I found out how much it was, I'm like, there's no, I'll be paying that debt the rest of my life. And it was to do a master's in social work. No offense, but we never make a lot of money.
Right.
I think I'll pass the debt. So from that perspective of changing, like, you change your mind. And I'm sure like many of our listeners are like, yeah, that is me too. Or maybe they also have a lot of passion. How do you balance that out? The knowing that you're invested 100% into an activity and you might change your mind. How do you make that not feel like a failure to you? Like you're walking away, like I see my clients do, right? Like they're like, oh my God, I invested so much time. I wasted my time. I think I know what you're going to tell me, but how do you manage that for yourself?
That's such a good question. I struggled with it initially because I did recognize that if I was going to do that, I was never going to get to a level of mastery that I really wanted, that someone else potentially could achieve, or that I could achieve if I stuck with the same thing. But for me, it's really important for me to be aligned and really all in with what I'm doing. And if I'm forcing myself, and I definitely saw this in the campsite business, because once I was out, it was like I was out. Like the way that I was running it then, I was like, this isn't what I want. This is definitely, like, I pretty much hit burnout in that business. And I was like, this is not what I signed up for. This is not working out the way I want it to. And I basically had to restructure that business to make it work for me, to enable me to pursue other passions. And so I actually kept that business, but changed loads of things. And that's why I started my podcast, the Bold Action Taker podcast. I called it Bold because I recognized that, like, being courageous and leaning into discomfort to change things that are already working, but that don't feel good to you, it's hard, and it really does require that, like, okay, like I'm it does, yeah, because it just doesn't, like, you can't keep going. Or I knew myself enough that I couldn't keep doing something that I'm just not interested in. And so I've kind of accepted that part of me that is interested in loads of things and wants to try loads of things. And I even remember being a child, I remember talking to my parents' friends. I was always fascinated by other people, and I would always ask them, oh, what do you do for a living? And the ones who would tell me, oh, well, I left school at 16 and then I started working in this company and I've been there for 22 years. I was like instantly bored with the conversation. I was like, oh my God, that sounds so boring. Hopefully I didn't say that as a child, but then the ones who were like, oh well, I've done like 10 different jobs, I've done this, and I've been there, and I've traveled here, and I was an insurance broker, and I started my own business, and I've done this for a bit. I was so interested. It's like I wanted to do it all, and I actually saw that as like the adventurous life and one that I wanted a part of. So I've just decided not to make myself wrong for being interested in other things, and for my interest to like waver, and know that I'm never going to do a good job of something if I force myself to stick with it the way that it is. So I have like two options really, because the option of me staying and just forcing through it is not an option I give myself. So it's either I change things and I'm courageous enough to tweak it to make it work with like for me, or I just move on. I just decide like, no, that was like a chapter in my life, and I did a good job, and I've closed the door, and now I'm on to other things. And it's just a choice not to make that mean I wasn't good, I was a failure, because it wasn't a failure. It was totally fine, but it just wasn't bringing me joy. So I move on.
Okay, so to summarize, let's see if I can do this properly. You, first of all, have accepted your human condition of like, I might get bored fast, or I might lose interest in something, and that's just who I am. And you're not making it wrong to have this characteristic about yourself. Love it. Yeah. It's like mindfulness 101, accept who you are. Then you either assess and evaluate within yourself, okay, is it supporting me? Is it making me feel essentially good? Like, am I happy doing this? And if the answer is no, you give yourself two options, not three. You don't stick and push through something that you don't like, which I think is such a it's such a good self-respect thing to do, right? Like you're just showing you self-respect, not to push. Sometimes people don't know when to quit and when to push. How do you feel about the end result, right? Like what would it look like for me 5 years from now if I push through this? Would I feel proud, or would I be exhausted, right? Like, will I be like, oh my God, I've ruined my marriage because I pushed through like this one thing that took over all of my life. So I love that. And then you understand it's going to take whichever of these three options, I guess, or really the two that you choose, because I love you use that word, is going to require courage and effort. So you said earlier you lean into discomfort. How the heck do you do that for my listeners?
Okay, so I used to view discomfort as like a stop sign, like as you go in the wrong way. And an example of that is that the campsite, I wasn't happy with how it was running. I was doing everything myself, like wearing all the hats.
I was about to ask you, did you delegate? No. Okay.
Not at that point. I was very much, my day looked like I was waking up in the morning at 7. I was doing inquiries and admin for the first couple of hours of the day. Then I'd head out to the field, and I would basically strip out the bedding, clean the tents. And I had 7 at that point. So I was doing it all. It would take me like nearly an hour for each one, like sweeping and cleaning and checking the crockery and putting the barbecue stuff there. And I went from one tent to the next, prepping it for the next set of guests. And then I'd finish around about 4 o'clock. I'd work through lunch, skip lunch. I'd then clean the toilets and the showers, like the communal stuff. And then I'd wait for the guests to arrive because they'd start arriving. Then I'd show them round. Then I would finish about 6 or 7. I'd go back home. I'd have an hour for dinner to cook and eat and to have dinner. And then I'd go right back to checking inquiries. And then I'd finish by ironing all the bed linen that I'd been washing all throughout the day. And I did that on repeat. It was awful. And I did it for months and months and months. And I knew, I was like, I know that this isn't sustainable, and I know that I can't. I'm not doing a good job of marketing and running the business and being strategic or keeping track of my numbers or any of that stuff while I'm cleaning the tent. So I really knew that I needed to hire somebody, but I was viewing the discomfort around spending money, investing money in someone else before I felt comfortable. It didn't feel comfortable to me, and I was seeing that as like a stop sign, like this is the wrong direction. Rather than seeing it as like, oh, this is the way. And so I literally just changed that sign in my mind, like in my visualization of what it looks like. So anytime I see there's something uncomfortable to do, or there's some fear there, I just decide that is the right path. like that is the way. It's like the signpost that says this is the right way for your business. And then I just decide like this is what I'm going to do. And I really make sure that it's safe for me to do that. So it's like, because there's like a stretch and there's a snapping point. You don't want to go to the snapping point, but really go into what is the worst case scenario here, and making sure that I feel safe enough that if I pursue this path, there is an out at some point. Like I'm not going to bankrupt myself. I'm going to hire help for a period of time. I'm going to spend this much money on it. It's going to feel uncomfortable. And I'm committed to doing it for this period of time that feels safe to me. And that's what enables me to take courageous action that feels scary, that is leaning into discomfort, and it feels like I'm going the right direction, and I still have an option to get out if it becomes too uncomfortable or too unsafe.
Or if it was a bad idea, right? Because the unknown is...
Well, I just decide there's like no bad ideas, like in business. I just decide like there's no wrong decision. There's like no bad ideas. It is just like, this is the idea I have, and it's the best idea I have in the moment. And so this is what I'm going for. And then I just never allow myself to look back and say that was a dumb idea. I look back and be like, what have I learned? Like, oh, okay, this is what we could definitely do differently next time. And maybe I wouldn't repeat the same decision, but I still wouldn't tell myself it was a bad idea.
Love it. The power of one word, right? The power of one word. How you feel after saying this was a bad idea. Because I do have a lot of clients who hesitate making decisions because they're afraid of making the wrong decisions. And I always tell them, no decision is ever final. Unless the decision was to end your life and you did it, and then you changed your life, like, then yes, that was too late. But anything else, it may be very uncomfortable to undo. It may be really like, you might have a lot of heavy emotions to have to like change your mind, but you can always change your mind. Yeah.
And I love that. And yeah, I definitely agree. And in business particularly, I feel like there is nothing that is irreversible.
No. Yeah. I would challenge that to like life. Like, it's not like, when I think of, okay, if you had a baby, really like bring the baby back into like the non-existent world, I guess. Once you had this baby, but some decisions, I realize you have to live with the consequences of those decisions. Right. But for the majority, I would say the same. So like for all of you listening and thinking like, that's me, I'm afraid of changing your mind later. Like Kirsty was saying, like, I know I'm going to change my mind. So what? Because what you're telling me, Kirsty, is that you just go full heart. Well, the idea is there. You're like, this is the best idea ever. And I think that's so powerful because it allows you to show up to the idea fully on and like really willing to go through the motions of that idea and then learn from the idea, whether you continue to keep it alive or you deviate from the idea. So just love it. I've always said, as long as you have a goal, who cares how many times you change it if it's just moving you forward, right? Have any goal. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I love it.
So you went from like not being able to delegate, really. It sounded like it was like the discomfort came from potentially spending the money, but also like when I hear my clients, I wonder if that was for you as well. They wouldn't do it as good as I would. They wouldn't know how to do it. So that fear of delegation and like maybe things not going exactly as you picture them in your mind.
Yeah, I definitely did have that at the beginning. There was sort of multi-layered things that I realized actually through coaching, like what was really coming up for me. And there were like so different aspects. One was the scarcity around the money. Like, okay, I'm going to be paying out this money. I don't know, like the uncertainty. I don't know how full we're going to be this year. I don't know how many bookings we're going to have, like feeling like it was out of my control. And not feeling like, okay, I have this consistent money. I can definitely afford it. Like, and we have to make decisions like that all the time in business. So there was like the money scarcity. There was also the lack of trust in me that I would use my time, like the time that I would get back, that person would be working, for me and cleaning the tents, that I was going to use that time well. Because sometimes, I was unproductive and I'd procrastinate on stuff, I'm human. And I was like, oh God, what if then I was viewing it just as a cost. So like, I don't think I'm going to be using that time really to get sales in and really improve my marketing. So it's like a lack of trust there. There was also a lack of belief that I could really do better than I was doing. doing already. And that was because I was telling myself the whole time, like, I'm not where I should be. Like, I should have figured this out already. Like, I'm clearly not good at business. I'm failing. You know, that whole narrative that I had, which was like very harsh self-judgment of myself. That was basically causing me to just lack belief in my ability to proceed. So it was that. And then it was also like just a lack of belief that I could find someone that they were going to be reliable, that they would do a good job, you know. And yeah, it was like trusting that and trusting that that I'd be able to sort of leave it up to them, find that person, they'd do a good job, and I wouldn't have to micromanage. And the first few people that I did get in, I did have to micromanage. I did have to really check what they were doing, and sometimes they did fuck up. They did mess up.
Oh no, I swear all the time.
Oh, that's all right.
This is a safe place, Kirsty. Be you.
Yes, they did mess up, and I, you know, and I was like, oh no, this isn't good. And those first few times were also essential. That's why I sort of don't ever look at it as being a bad idea. Like, even the people who I hired initially taught me so much about what I needed the next time. So then I was like, right, okay, they're still not getting it right. What do I need in order to make it easier for them? And so then I came up with like standard operating procedures and, you know, like a little map of a tent. This is how the bed should be positioned. Honestly, it was so bizarre. Some of these bell tents were like on a slight slant, like only slightly, but it was fine if you put the pillow on the top side of the slope, which you would think is like common sense.
No.
And then I hired these cleaners and I would go around like just before the people arrived just to check. I'd be like, why did she put the pillow at the foot of the bed, which is on the lowest part of the hill? And it just blew my mind, like how different people think. And so then I had to be like, okay, I need a diagram with like where the pillows go, which is something that you would just never think of doing. But until you hire someone to do it for you, you start seeing those things then.
You know, I personally have had a hard time delegating myself, and I would have never described myself as a perfectionist, because to me, I'm like, why are you nitpicking at like the details, right? Like, I would have never described myself this way until it was my baby, right? Like, this is my business, is my baby. So like, I've got like this very clear vision, which for anybody listening, when you're in an executive of a company, or when you own your business, or when you're the CEO for a company, you've got like a clear vision. This is what we are in these positions, because we are visionaries. We have a vision and we can see it so clearly. We know it can happen. That's our gift. All of us in leadership, this is what we do so greatly. We just have that vision. What I had to learn and master, and I don't master by any stretch. I'm still working. I'm like work in progress. And I would say I'm probably like intermediate level, is exactly what you're describing. Thinking of creative ways to express to others what's in my brain.
Yeah.
What is my vision? And I find that I would say, I'm a former therapist. Communication is my thing. You know, I teach and I train social workers in the past provincially. Like, I know communication. Turns out that the type of communication you need to delegate is so specific, so that you can stop assuming everything is common sense. Because to me, right? And in leadership, you kind of think like, well, everybody who, you know, do this task will think in this way. And you're like, you'd be surprised. Only you think that way, you know? Only you and a few other people think that way. And it's not that they're smarter than you or less. It's just like you said, brains wired differently, not thinking of that. And I think for anybody who's struggling with delegating, just pay attention to how many things you assume are common sense. And so you don't feel the need to spell them out. Think about them. And I think, Kirsty, what I love about this piece of your story is understanding that, like, I always looked at companies and like, how do they develop their policies? This is how. Try and error. They're like, oh my God, there should really be a document that explains to people point A to B. How do we release a podcast? What are the steps? Who does what? The more clear that you are on what the steps are, the better and more pleasant experience you'll have delegating. That's what I'm hearing.
Absolutely. I agree. And I even think now I'm much better at it. And I take it almost as my full responsibility. So like them doing a good job is my responsibility, which means it gives me agency and power rather than like blaming them or feeling disempowered myself. Like, well, like, I don't know, I can't find anyone who can do a good job, because if it depends on you finding the perfect person, then it's hard work to do that. Whereas if you're like, oh, anyone can do this role, like within reason, I just have to explain it better, then the onus is on me to do a better job of that. And the whole time you still have to give them enough freedom to develop their own way of doing things and not be nitpicking at all the things. So there's still like a balance to be found where you're not micromanaging every minute of the day. And I think that everyone has to like find their own balance, and there will be mini fails along the way that you're learning from as you develop that sort of skill set, I guess. But yeah, once I tried it with a few different people, and then I ended up hiring in people. By that point, I had like a very clear system after I'd gone through like 5 different seasons or 5 different people that like these are your jobs. Here's your checklist. These are the things that keep being missed off. These are the things I have to really stress. These are the most important things. And I think I never would have got to that had I not had all those little mini fails along the way.
For
and
sure.
I think that like being okay with the time that it takes you to like improve is not a problem. If you let it not be a problem, it's much more pleasant as you go through that experience.
Love it, because it keeps you kind of like curious on your project of improvement, right? Like, okay, I am teaching next Monday, actually, not the time of this recording. I don't know when this will be released, but at the time of this recording, the following Monday, I am teaching a workshop on failing with grace for high executives, because I think that we have such a hard time understanding the gifts and the lessons. And like each failure is just one, like a vitamin towards success the next time, right? Like, and seeing it that way just gives you the patience and the appreciation for those failing moments, which I think is very important. So you said you became time and productivity obsessed. I want to dive into that. I can only imagine. Actually, I'm solo parenting at the time. I was telling you, like, I need a second cup of coffee. I've got a beautiful child who's very smart, and love him. He's a toddler, 3.5. And I didn't realize how much my husband did around the house until he had to travel for work. And I'm like, oh crap, those little things that you do make a difference in my day, like starting right on time. So I think that I was just reflecting on what have I learned in my solo parenting days. And one of the things I learned is that I am incredibly productive and organized when I can only rely on myself. Somehow something shifts in my brain, like, oh, I'm going to be busier. So like everything's accounted for in my calendar. I know exactly what I'm doing, when I'm doing it. I'm willing to let go of certain things this week because, the circumstances in which I'm in. I've been super flexible in changing. Like I work out religiously. This is my me time, but I've been flexible to not go out. Obviously I can't go at 5 a.m. I can't leave my son alone. So I've been flexible in finding that spot, even if that means my workout is going to be way shorter than normal. And I find it's been such a balanced couple of weeks because I've been able to work through this. And I think it takes a lot of skills to do this, right?
Right.
But I'm curious because you said you became time obsessed and productivity obsessed, which I think is very important for everybody listening here who are in a fight against time constantly. And, they're like, time is my enemy, but also want to be very productive. Yet they're watching Netflix every night for like 3-4 hours. Well, right. I'm not for that. You can be productive. That's what you're doing. That's my opinion. But I imagine that this all happened to you because you were so busy, because you have too many passions. The only way in which you can incorporate all of your passions and interests is by being really intentional with your time and productivity. Right. Do you have anything that you want to offer to my busy humans over here listening?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's like three aspects, I think, 3 things that I teach my clients or sort of areas that we have to look at when they're trying to regain control of their time. If they're business owners and they have busy lives, and those 3 things really are like, the first thing is to look at your business and all the things that you have got going on, like all of the projects that you're trying to juggle, all of the responsibilities you have, like sort of zoom out and have a really detailed overview of all of the things that you're trying to get done. Because one of the problems I think that means that people feel like they're not in control of their time is that they're trying to fit like 300 hours worth of stuff into 168 hours week, basically. Like
there's lack of awareness of how much time it actually going to take to the task that they have in mind.
And it's actually, it might be true. Like when they're saying, a lot of the time we look at the mindset of like, I don't have time. And then we do want to look at, well, are you actually being productive with your time? Like, do you have the time? Or is that just an unhelpful thought that spins you out in overwhelm and then you don't don't end up using your time well.
Right.
So, I mean, because that is half the time, but the other half of the time is that you genuinely are over ambitious with what you're trying to get done. Like you're trying to be superhuman and trying to power through. And you can do that for a short season for sure, but it's not sustainable. And it's also not it's not conducive to building a balanced life. And work-life balance sort of gets thrown around as a term, and some people get triggered by the word. They don't like it because they think that it's supposed to be equal or something, and I never champion that. It's just making sure that you have enough time to look after you and your health and rest, and you can fit in the things that you want alongside your business. There's no like correct proportion. It's just what is sustainable for you. So I think that like the first step is always look at like, can I actually fit in all of these things into my day? And with my business, with the campsite business, when I looked at like my calendar, I was being super productive. There was no dicking around. Like, yeah, I wasn't watching Netflix. Like I wasn't doing anything. I had an hour basically for myself to cook and eat dinner. And the rest of the time I was on my feet, I was moving constantly. And so it wasn't that I could have been more productive in those hours really, but it meant that the way to solve for it meant that I had to change how that business ran. I either needed to hire help or I needed to automate certain things. I needed to eliminate certain things. Like I needed to really restructure that business. And sometimes it's not a major restructure. It is just a few simple tweaks that you need to make. And some of those things might just be pressing pause on some projects. Like this is not the time now, or how can we keep this going, but like extend the time frame at which we want to get it done, so that the amount of time we have to spend each week is less. Like that's always the first step, making sure that the math works basically.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. And then the second step is literally
okay, hold on before you go to the second one. Because like I like to just bring it all back into one little package for people listening. So first step is to really have a great estimate of how long it's taking you to do the things and how long would it take you, because we can assume.
Yeah.
I know I used to be a 5-minute person, so everything was 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I'll wash my hair in 5 minutes and I'll be down in 5 minutes and I'll be at your house in 5 minutes. And so I was chronically late everywhere because I genuinely said the words, it takes 5 minutes. And in my brain, I'm like, it took me only 5 minutes. Clearly, I don't understand the lapse of 5 minutes. Okay. So I know in business, it's so easy to be like, oh, writing that article, easy. It's going to take me an hour. When maybe you're writing like, actually, I need to do research and I'm going to talk to somebody who's done this before. And like before, you spent a full day doing one article. And like for me, I've got so much hair, Kirsty. So when I said I had like these 5 minutes, but it was a wash my hair day, blow dry my hair, like there's no way I was going to leave my house within 2 hours from the moment I, showered. So like, yeah, I think this is it sounds so simple, but it is so important for you guys to really, truly have a pulse on how long it takes you to do the task that you're working towards. And like you said, spell them all out and know more or less, because you could be constantly having the feeling that you're failing, and all you're really failing at really is understanding how long it takes you to do the things. You and I had the same coach, Kirsty, a while back. And one of the things that stuck with me the most from her way of doing things, and one sentence she said was, you guys constantly underestimate the amount of time and effort that it takes to make it to your goal. And that could be more truth to me. Personally, I'm like, yep, I underestimate. I'm like, I'm going to put this for sale and it's going to sell right away. And, it's not going to require me thinking 5 million ways of how else can I say the same thing, right? So like, I love this. And then the 3 things you said, when you do look at what's working effectively, how am I looking at my time? What am I doing with my hours? Eliminate, delegate, or change, right? Like, does it need to be changed? Does it need to be delegated to somebody, or does it need to be eliminated? Yeah. I imagine what's working well, just something that you keep. Okay. Did I miss anything from this one step?
No, I think that's it. Just, a list of like everything that you're trying to fit into your week, basically, and then really looking at them individually. How much time does it usually take me? Because we can obviously like speed up sometimes and take longer on other times. But if we work on the rule that generally we underestimate that, so it's better to be more cautious and decide, okay, it's going to take me twice as long than I actually think. Yeah. And then basically decide, like, does that actually fit into my week with eating and sleeping and all these things?
Parenting and wifing and, like all the things. So I love that you said it's not a 50-50. I think that's what's been so messed up about modern women in life, is that we're trying, everything has to be 50-50 or equal amounts, that we're trying to be so precise with our relationship and how much everybody does with our work. And that's only working against us. So I just love that balance looks different for each of you on any given day. Like today I might have a lot of extra energy, so I might be able to like eat less, run more,
Right.
And tomorrow maybe the complete opposite, where I need to sleep more, eat more, do less. So love that. That is not a perfect equation, but rather like, how am I feeling? Kind of.
Yeah. Love it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you can
yes. Okay. Yeah. So first step is like really just understanding the math. I like to call that like the math part.
Okay.
And then the second thing you want to look at is actually, do I have some sort of system for managing my time? Like, as in for planning it, for telling me where certain things have to happen, when certain things have to happen, how long I've got to do them, in what order, like however it looks for you. I use like a calendaring system, like zero-sum calendaring, time blocking, whatever you want to call it. And it works really well for me. I used to use Post-it notes, like to-dos. And I used to have just like 1,000 Post-it notes all over my desk, and like piles of Post-it notes. And I also used to keep it all in my brain. So I didn't even realize how much energy that was taking from me. But as I was like walking up the hill from the campsite, I'd be like, I got to do this and then this and then this next and then this next. And I would just be running a constant to-do list in my head that was exhausting. Nice. And I was always feeling behind and I was always like driven by, let's just get the next thing done. So of course I didn't feel like I could switch off in my time off, because I still had this constant to-do list. Of course I never felt like I was on top of things, because I knew the next thing that needed to be done. So that really perpetuated like the hustling, overworking thing with me. And so being able to like eliminate some stuff, press pause on others, give myself permission to be really clean about, okay, these are what is important to me, this has to fit on my calendar. And then really having like a visual representation of my time, which is what a calendar is, and using that to actually plug in not just appointments but actual tasks. And like eating is on my calendar, cook dinner, things like that, which people think is crazy and a waste of time to do, but loads of those things are like recurring, so if you have a system like Google Calendar, you just set it up as a recurring appointment. You know that you're going to sleep every night, that you've got to like bed prep or whatever, like prep for the evening, that you've got to eat, that you've got to have lunch. And so blocking those on my calendar means that when I'm planning other things around it, even if I have to sometimes move it or squeeze it, and that just happens with life, it's not a big deal. And I'm still making sure that it's in there. And that way I know that I'm never going to be like over scheduled. And it also gives me like a visual representation as to when something needs working through mindset wise. Like, what am I avoiding? What have I moved on my calendar like 5 times? What have I, what session am I overrunning on and sort of people pleasing on? Or where is perfectionism creeping into this? All of those mindset things that need to be addressed, like the fear and the doubt, when you have a visual representation of what you need to get done and then you're not doing it, it's like a, hey, look at me, like this needs addressing. It's like a signal that's super useful to address it so that we can move forward.
One of the things that I want to highlight from what you've said is you just brought it to my attention. I hadn't realized in my own experience how much, having everything in my calendar, which I second everything Kirsty said. I do. I have a Google Calendar, love it, color code. I know what's what. I can talk to it and it just shows up, right? Like I can just talk to Siri and it just puts it in my calendar. I love it. One of the things that you just made me realize that has happened ever since I started using my calendar diligently. And I mean diligently, like my lunch hour is there, put off your phone is there, check your bank account is there, like all the things that I like to do and be reminded of, wash your hot car, buy groceries, all of that is there. It's giving me permission to really unplug on a regular basis because my brain is resting that I'm not forgetting anything.
Yeah.
If I just want to know what's going on tomorrow, it's so simple. Pull up my calendar and I'm like, this morning, and like now my assistant knows how I think, and like she puts things in my calendar exactly. This morning I woke up and the first thing on my calendar very early is like grab snacks because you have a full day. So I'm back today, and she knew. She was like, make yourself a shake, do something, but you're gonna have zero. So like, I'll be eating on the go today, but that's fair. I knew since I woke up. So instead I had like I normally don't eat breakfast. So I had a really big breakfast this morning, big to my standards of having no breakfast normally. And I'm good. And I mentally prepare for the day I have ahead. But it's truly like for those of you who are in overwhelm or like you would describe your brain always being on that hamster wheel, like Kirsty's brain was, like mine was. When you feel like you have a lot on your plate because you do have a lot of responsibilities, if you're not thinking on paper in some sort of way, your brain has been tasked to not forget something. And so it keeps at random times reminding you of random things. And you're like, no, not right now. I'm trying to sleep. Why are you reminding me of bringing flowers to my neighbor whose husband passed away? Like, I don't need to do. Like, why? Right? Like all those little things. My assistant does like, okay, don't forget to change your appointment for like, I'm removing a tattoo. To remove a tattoo that week, you're going to be in New York. I'm like, put it in my calendar. Don't tell me to remember. Just I now rely on that calendar. And it's great because I know it contains all of what I need, which allows me to take time off, sincerely time off. Right. And there's nothing in that calendar. I have a little party. I'm like, yes, I do whatever I want. And by the way, I have scheduled days of do whatever you want. Like, nice. You're not working today. You're not parenting. You're not wifing. These are your hours. You just do whatever you want. Okay. So a system. How do you, question for you, because when I think about systems, I also get like a bit of a electric shock in my system. Oh, systems, I don't know. Because most of us with like big vision are not so great at little details. Right. So when I have to like narrow down the details, you won't see me at my desk. I just hate it. I have to be walking and standing. That's my assistant's job. And I'm going to be walking and standing. And I'm like, okay, so let's think of the details. Like I literally have to move because it's just beyond me. Sit down at a little desk and think of all the details. How do you suggest for somebody who might feel like I do, going from like, it's all in my head to taking like that little baby step, maybe towards a system, even of understanding how long it takes you, say for business owners to launch a product, how long does it take them to like, come up with, I don't know, connections or write marketing sales emails, or like how do they go from big, like this is what I have to do, big project, to little? Is there anything in that system that you might know to spell out easier for them? Or
so I believe in like working with yourself rather than like against yourself, rather than like trying to fit yourself into a particular box. So if you're like, I just can never make myself do it, I'd question whether or not you need to. Like you could give yourself like so much time that, so it's almost like, okay, I want to launch this thing in 3 months, but you could be like, do you know what? I'm going to give myself 6 months to make sure that I get everything done. And then just be literally working on like,
already. Yes, love it.
So then like just literally just be like, okay, the next step I need to do is this. And so when you look at your week's calendar, you're just putting in the next step, and just make sure that it's always top of mind. Like, okay, every day or every week I am at least moving this forward, knowing, like we said, in business, everything is like changeable. So if when you get closer, you're like, I still feel like a million miles away from launching this thing, and you don't want to do the work of like, let's sit down and map out all the rest of what needs to be done, just extend the time frame. Like that's one way of doing it, just making it super easy for yourself, because eventually you will get it all done if you're just taking the next step and then the next step and then the next step. And then the other way is to do what you do in a way is recruit someone or hire someone, even if it's just for like a single session. Like you can hire a coach for like a single session to help you map out a project. Like I think it would be worth paying £500 to sit down and be like, okay, this is what we need to do to map out that project, just to get really clear on all the things and have them help you slot it into a time frame, because sometimes that is just overwhelming because in the moment your brain is like, oh my god, that's a lot, and you will instantly feel overwhelmed. So like actually getting someone who can support you through that process, if you want to map it out and you want a really big overview of like, this is what needs to be done, then I would say like like invest in someone who can actually help you with that. Or even if you hire an assistant, be like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to have an assistant meeting. We're going to flesh it out together, like a little brainstorming session type thing. Like that can be way more dynamic and fun and less overwhelming if you do it with someone else.
Absolutely. So in systems, consider hiring a system expert, somebody who can help you sort of spell that out of your brain, who can really grab. And this, by the way, is like a coach's best job is to spell your ideas that are not organized out into the world. Awesome. Let's move to point 3 because I'm aware of time.
Okay. The last point then is really protecting your time off. So
love that.
Because you can streamline your business and simplify your strategy and work on that first step, make sure that it all fit. You can have a calendar that a system, a way of managing your time, and you can be productive in the hours that you're working, like very intentional. I know what I'm doing. And you can have been coached through all the mindset fears and all of that. But if you are not protecting the time off, even if you've planned it into your calendar, okay, this is time off, you will end up overworking. You'll end up just filling that space. And so if you have a calendar system in place, you can usually see, am I protecting my time off or not? Like, first of all, am I scheduling it off? And then am I actually taking it off? And you can clearly see then, because sometimes I think we think we're having more time off than we actually are, or we think that we're more balanced than we are, or whatever. We're just not conscious of what's going on. But as soon as you get aware of, okay, I've actually worked till 11 o'clock at night for the last 4 nights. Is that something I want to be doing? Then you want to dive into why. Why are you doing that? Why are you not giving yourself permission to take that time off? And sometimes the answer is that you are overworking to prove something to yourself. Sometimes it's that you're buffering with work. So you're using it to avoid an emotion that, you don't want to feel, maybe related to your personal life. It might be that your personal life isn't that fun because you haven't taken the time to make it that fun because you've been so busy working on the business. And so you really want to get to the nitty gritty of what's going on here. Why am I working so hard? What do I think is going to happen if I give myself permission to have the time off? Because there's this hustling drive in a lot of people, partly because of societal beliefs that they've adopted. You have to work super hard in order to get what you want. You have to work more hours is better than less, that kind of mentality. But more gets you there faster is better, it's better there than here. All of those beliefs are problematic when you're trying to build a balance, build a life that you can enjoy as you're achieving what you want in your business. And what you want to look at is my health in good condition? Am I making time for relationships? Are my kids saying, oh, you're always working? Things like that, as indicators that maybe you are turning to work a little bit too much. And then you want to unpick those beliefs, because the truth is, there isn't better than here in so many ways. Even if you're hustling for financial success, it's really, you're doing that so that you can feel an emotion, you can feel better about yourself, you can feel successful, feel worthy. And the way that you're working probably won't get you there faster, because if you're doing it in an unsustainable way, you will either burn out or you'll get there and you'll have no one to share it with.
If everyone.
Right.
Or you lost health, right? You've lost health somehow.
Yeah.
So love this. I love this. I would add to these beliefs that are problematic for protecting time off or even scheduling it, is the belief that it is making you lazy, that there won't be any progress if you have time off.
Right.
And it is such a damaging thought to have about rest. Right. And it is such a damaging thought to have about unplugging, because it keeps you on, and nothing can be on indefinitely. Right. If you keep the bulb lights, the lights of the lighting in your house on every day, what's going to happen to that light bulb, right? At some point it's going to be I'm out. You can't turn it back on ever again. So to conserve energy to regenerate energy. I think that most of us haven't understood that what comes after rest is a crazy amount of energy. And so when you're feeling low on energy, really just pay attention to that calendar.
Right.
It is like, and not all rest, at least is how I understand it. Ever since becoming a mom, I'm like, so what does rest look like now? Like, when is this child not needing me? Ever. And I've realized that sometimes resting is going for a walk with my mom or going on a bike ride. Like, it's not actually staying on the couch and doing nothing, but changing my scenery, talking to a friend, doing this podcast. To me, this is restful. It's like so much, so invigorating to talk to somebody who's like-minded. So really open up to what you block this time off for. But really, what helped me was to really notice what were my highest priorities and values in life, and how the time that I've got was being used and highlighting what really matters to me most. And I realized that it was never at the top of my scale to make, like, to be rich and make money. That was never my highest value. My highest value is to be a mom, a good mom, mom, to be a good wife, right? And I still want to make money, don't get me wrong. And I still want to be successful. But if I was to put it in a scale, well, by just looking at my time, I would say that the priorities were different than what they actually were in my heart, right? So that also has allowed me personally, and I hope for all of you listening, to sort of like make more sense of how you use your time. Is the usage of your time currently highlighting what are your greatest values, right? Like, I value health so much. If you look at my expenditure of time, that will make sense to you. Like, yes, she goes, to the gym, or she goes to see her naturopath. Like, there's a lot of time and money and resources invested towards my health, because that's a high priority, because then I can stay a long time with my baby. So, like, I do love this protecting. How do you suggest they protect time off? How are you calendar committing? Like, what will you say?
So you first have to be super intentional with it and actually plan it off. Like, that's like number one, and being really intentional with what you're going to use that time for as well. Not just be like off, because if in your brain it's like sitting around watching Netflix or making progress in my business, if you're super driven, then of course you're going to choose making progress in my business. But if you actually plan, like, okay, tonight we're going to have a date night, tonight, tomorrow we're going to go here and do that activity, the next day we're going to do this. If you're more intentional with the activities and make them joyful and fun and adventurous and different, you're much more likely to do it. And then really, when it comes time to do it, evaluate what is coming up when you're not. Like, you have to notice that, oh, I just didn't do that thing. Why? Because if you don't unpick that, like the thoughts that you have about rest being a waste of time or not being productive or whatever, if you don't pull out those beliefs that faster is better and I'm gonna catch up with my work, if you don't really look at if that's true, then you won't change that behavior. So that's where, like, a lot of the coaching comes in, to really unpick, what are your priorities, and reinforce that, and then act on it in your calendar.
Super, super helpful. All right. So the 3 points to productivity, you guys, these are the 3 steps to productivity, real productivity. Kirsty, thank you so much for coming here and sharing your wisdom and brilliancy with all of us. I want to welcome all of you to scroll over to the show notes, where you will be able to find all of Kirsty's contact points. If you are a woman in business and are looking for a coach, Kirsty is your gal. She will coach you on time management, productivity, and all the things that you heard her say here. So she's cool. You just heard her. She's very cool and knowledgeable and fun. So if that's what you're looking for, and also just go listen to her podcast too. I think that'll be very cool for you guys to have a new podcast to listen to if you haven't already.
Thank you so much.
Are there. Kirsty, thank you so much for coming. I am so happy that we got to do this.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Talk to you soon. See you guys next Monday.